problems associated with contractarian ethics. So what are the major problems around this view of ethics? Remember David Hume? David Hume, who gave the is-ought gap or the fact-value gap. He said that we cannot decide on what we ought to do on the basis of what exists in the world. It means we should not give normative statements on the basis of the facts that we see around us. And if we do that, then we are sacrificing our reason and we are putting our head in the guillotine. That's why it is very important for us that we do not decide our oughts on the basis of the facts or the is, and that is known as the fact value gap or the Hume's law or Hume's guillotine, is-ought problem, is-ought gap. There are so many names for it. So David Hume, the Scottish philosopher, he says that why should we agree to a social contract of which we were not part as deliberators? Now that's a valid question. Think of this, that when the society was in a disorganized way, some people, mostly rational individuals, decided that we will go into a common agreement for the sake of common social security and for the sake of preservation of social order. Maybe that contract was signed 300 or say 500 years before present. You were not a party when the clauses were negotiated. You took birth at a much later date. Then why should you agree to a contract made by your ancestors? That's what Hume says. Like say for example, think about the US Constitution that came into existence in 1787. In 2024 or 25, why should somebody agree to the clauses that were signed by those who were present in 1787? At that time, the ethics of the society, the world view was very different from what it is today in modern industrial technology driven societies. Today's societies are very different from that kind of society. So why should we agree to that kind of thing? That's Hume's basic argument. That's the first problem with the contract. Then Hume says that Hobbes says that if we withdraw the social contract, then we will fall into the state of nature. So contract is the device that takes us from the state of nature to the state of nation or nation state. So from state of nature, if you want to come to the stage of nation state, you have to go via contract. That's what Hobbes is arguing. Hobbes says that if we withdraw the contract, what would happen? We will fall back into the state of nature. And the state of nature is not a good place. Why? Hobbes says because in the state of nature, everybody enjoys unlimited freedom. And unlimited freedom includes the freedom to harm others as well. And if you can harm others, others can harm you. And therefore, we would like to avoid such a kind of catastrophic situation. The idea is to build a civilized state or a nation state through the social contract. Therefore, the contract is a very holy document. The contract has its own sanctity, and it is the duty of the government to maintain that sanctity. And therefore, Hobbes is of the opinion that the contract becomes indispensable. If you withdraw it, you go to a very bad phase where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. Hume says this is where Hobbes has kept his head in the Hume's guillotine. This is where Hobbes has sacrificed reasonableness. Why? Because Hume says that withdrawal of the contract will lead us to the state of nature is just an assumption. And further, the state of nature will always be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish. And short is also a fantasy, because there could be a situation where people have evolved to that stage that they understand that what is moral, what is immoral. The ethics of the society has changed to that extent that people can recognize it, what is good, what is bad, what they should do, what they shouldn't. They might not always fall into a stage where everybody is barbaric, everybody is uncivilized. That won't be the case. Like, say, for example, think of this. In several states, the government machinery is completely uprooted or destroyed to some extent. Especially during coups, you would see that the entire society is in disruption. Still, some morals prevail in the society. Like, say, for example, family morals or clan morals or group morals, they still prevail in the society. So having this assumption that if we withdraw the social contract, always life would be very bad, might not be a very good assumption. Okay, and that's where Hobbes is putting his head in Hume's guillotine, argues Hume. Secondly, you see that this social contract that people have participated in is not always a mutual contract. Like, say, for example, there is a person X who is not happy with certain terms of the contract, but yet decides to take part into the contract or partake into the contract because he fears the law or he fears social boycott. There is government which is sitting over his head and is telling him to follow the contract, because the government is also the guardian and protector of the contract, and if he deviates from the clauses of the contract, then government will chase that person. So maybe you are not happy with the terms of the contract, yet you decide to follow the contract because you are fearful of punishment, or you are fearful of the social boycott that you must have to face. Like, so for example, one clause in the contract which goes something like this, that there will be education only for a particular gender. And suppose you don't agree to that. Remember that during the negotiation of the contract, there could be some sections who would be in a relative advantageous position, and they may twist the clauses in their favor. Or a particular gender will be having only voting rights, or property rights would be given only to a particular section of the population. If these kind of laws are made, then you can understand that somebody might not be happy with this, even if he belongs to the beneficiary group. Suppose he belongs to that gender which is entitled to education, yet he feels somewhere deep down that it is not right, gender disparity should not prevail as far as education is concerned. That's his thought. But still, he is not able to express his views. Why? Because he fears social boycott from his own community. And therefore, the clauses of the social contract might not always be just clauses. And therefore, Rawls says that in order to have a fair social contract which will lead to fair structure of the society and a just society, you must have the negotiations in the original position under the veil of ignorance. Now, this is the third criticism in this. The veil of ignorance is an imagined device by the American philosopher and ex-Harvard professor John Rawls. This veil of ignorance सुनने में तो बड़ा अच्छा लगता है, but it is not always a very good practical tool. Let's go back to what we discussed yesterday. Remember, I told you that there is a big room which is divided into small chambers, and people are sitting in those chambers. Like, so people are sitting in those chambers and they are taking a look at the clauses which is displayed on a screen before them, and they are taking decisions by keeping the principles of justice in mind. That's what Rawls says, that they will try to balance equality and liberty, and they may tolerate inequality if the benefits of the inequality flows to those who are in the worst of situations. So that we understood in the last class. But as I told you, that these people, they are not completely ignorant. they have some idea about the facts, science. They are also motivated by the minimal sense of justice. The only thing that they do not know is their position in the society in advance, because they are under the wheel of ignorance. Once the wheel is lifted, then only they would come to know who they are in the society. And because of this ignorance about their own identity, they always choose those clauses which are beneficial for all, because once the veil is lifted, they may find themselves on the side of suffering. We have seen that in the last class. But is complete ignorance about yourself really possible? Like, say, for example, think of this, that the screen shows that a particular right, say for example, voting rights, will be given only to people belonging to a particular race. Now remember, people have idea about ethnicity. They do not know to which ethnic group they belong. But one who is in this room, he might take a look, or she might take a look at his or her own skin color and get some vague idea about who he or she is, even if the person is under the veil of ignorance. Further, suppose there is an audio command that you have to give in. The moment you speak, you understand the accent of your speech. By that, you may understand, you may get some understanding who you are. So, when we say that you have to be put under veil of ignorance, and then only you become a deliberator in that negotiation of the social contract clauses, complete ignorance is neither possible nor it is ever achievable. Why? Because people will have some faint idea about themselves, because people still have logic, they still have reason, they understand science, they understand economics, they understand politics, they understand everything, they understand language, they understand culture. The only thing that they don't know is they don't know who they are. But by using their reason, they may use the inductive approach, look at how they speak, what is their height, how they are built, all those kind of things, how they behave, what are their preferences. By looking at all those kind of things, they might understand that who they are, or at least they might gain some faint understanding or some rudimentary understanding, basic understanding about their identity. The moment they have that understanding, they can always build over it. So that's why veil of ignorance, theoretically possible, practically very difficult to implement. So these were the problems associated with the social contract theory or the contractarian view of ethics.